And I feel like the pharmaceutical companies are very kind of almost like sneaky in the way that they are not required to evaluate participants after stopping the drug. They've never evaluated that once in clinical trials, ever. Once the 12-week trial is over, they say to the participants, bye-bye. I would just say I would encourage anyone who has this to start speaking up about it. I just feel like the more that we have a critical mass of people speaking up about this, there'll be a lot more attention on this. We'll be able to get the help we need way sooner. So
I completely agree, and extremely well said. I mean, there are things you can do. I mean, even if you want to come on the channel and share your story, you can share only what you want to share. You don't have to share the most intimate details about what you're going through. Just talk about what you want to talk about. All right. Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Mark Millick here with the Moral Medicine YouTube channel. So today we are going to be interviewing Rosie. So Rosie is a PSSD patient that's had this for about 4 years. She's also the president of the PSSD Network. So Rosie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's like not very nice, but also nice to be here.
Yeah, I completely understand. No, we really appreciate you coming on yeah, for sure, Rosie. Really appreciate you coming on the channel. So we will just go ahead and jump into your story here. Rosie, what was your life like before you developed PSSD?
A lot better than what it is now. I guess I was like, in retrospect, I didn't realize how good my life was until I got this condition and I have these symptoms that I have to try and live with. But yeah, it was like, I guess up until I had like experienced kind of like that depression that I had around the COVID lockdowns, my life was amazing. Like it was so in color and so vibrant compared to what life is now. And I was so I just had so much vitality and like everything seemed so much brighter. And now everything's just very numb and very kind of gray. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, regular depression is completely different than PSSD depression. And you don't realize how bad it can get until you get PSSD, or in my case, PFS. So I do understand that. So how did you get prescribed the drug? Did you go to a dermatologist? I'm sorry, I'm always asked that question because it's PFS. Did you go to a regular doctor, or who did you go to?
Yeah, that's okay. So I obviously was struggling a lot with the depression symptoms that I was having. A lot. I know now in retrospect, it was literally all caused by my situation. My environment was just really shitty. Like I think I can just tell now that it was all just the wrong kind of lifestyle. I was locked down in my house for months and months and months. I know some people didn't mind that, but I need to be around people. I really struggled with that. And so I went to the GP and I got a prescription for Lexapro and I didn't take it because I was like, oh, I don't really know. Like they've just kind of given it to me. I don't really know enough about it. I feel like I should be speaking to like someone, getting a more professional opinion. Well, how can you get more professional than a GP? But I felt like I needed a more specialized opinion, or like, you know, when you're watching all this stuff online that's telling you maybe you have undiagnosed depression, or maybe you have this, or maybe you have this. I was like, I wanted to speak to someone who would know a lot about it. So I went and sought the guidance of a private psychiatrist.
Okay.
And when I had the interview, I spoke to him for maybe like half an hour. He was really lovely, gave me all gave me the kind of he asked me just a lot of questions about myself. He gave me a lot of space to really speak about the things that I was going through, which I feel like the GP didn't really do, as a very in and out kind of system, because that's what GP clinics are realistically. And so after I got given the drug, I was just kind of like, well, it must be safe. But just backtracking a little bit, I actually said to him, oh, so what would you recommend? And he said, I would recommend an SSRI, blah, blah. I said, oh, I've got some friends that are on Lexapro that said that's really helpful. He goes, oh yeah, I can give you Lexapro. And that was how he decided to give me Lexapro. Was literally because I said, oh, I have some friends on that. Like, that's the one that they said is really helpful. So he goes, oh, okay, we'll give you Lexapro. That was that was it. So then I was kind of like, I remember thinking, that's a bit weird. Like, is that how you know what drug is the right drug for someone? They just kind of ask you, oh, can I have Lexapro? Yeah, of course, I'll give it to you.
It's that simple.
Like, yeah. So then I came home and
did you feel comfortable taking him? And you said you went to him, you asked him a bunch of questions. I mean, did you feel like you would receive the proper information about potential risks?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I just was told it can take a few weeks to a few months for your body to adjust. The typical spiel, it can take 8 weeks for this drug to kick in. You know, be careful at the start, because I was actually told at the start this can increase, like if you're having thoughts of harming yourself, this can increase. So he did tell me that, but that was about it. And he just said take whatever it was, like the 10 milligram tablets, and yeah, he said come back to me and we'll check in like a month.
Okay.
And yeah, I had virtually no informed consent. Like he didn't go over any potential side effects until I went back to him and I spoke to him about it.
Yeah. So how long was that then? I guess, I mean, back up a little bit. How long did you take the drug for, and what was your experience while you were taking it?
So I took it for 4.5 months, including my taper off the drug. I started it in about August of 2020. The first 4 weeks I started taking it. The first 4 weeks I was on 10 milligram, and my side effects were really bad instantly from like the first pill. Well, in retrospect, I didn't know from the first pill because it wasn't something I was mentally scanning, but I had like the emotional blunting. I would have had the sexual dysfunction, like all of these things, but I just never, never kind of, I just thought it meant the medication was working. I didn't think it was a side effect at the start, because I was seeing a psychologist at the time, like once a week. And I remember saying like, wow, like my anxiety's like gone. This is amazing. Like I don't have any anxiety. I knew I didn't feel anything else either, but I just remember thinking like I have, like, it was just such a break. Everything was very like, and then it just was like completely cut out and very muted, very numbed. And I thought that was good, but I was like, okay, like I'll just wait until I adjust to the medication and then I'll feel so much better. And that's what I was told would happen. I waited like a month. I had basically all of the symptoms you can think of: tinnitus, visual snow, extreme sexual dysfunction, emotional blunting, cognitive issues. My vision completely changed. It was like, if I was looking straight ahead and then I would look over that way, there was like a lag, like a delay in my visual processing. And that I found that really like distracting and frustrating when you're trying to complete like uni work, just feeling completely numb, like worse than I'd ever felt. And I remember thinking like by about the first month, I was like, this is not helping. Like maybe there's something not right. So I went back to the psychiatrist and he said, oh, it's probably because your chemicals in your brain haven't evened out. So I really think we should go up to 20 milligrams. And then, I think what will happen is, like what I find happens with my patients is it tends to kind of even out. And then after about that 8-week mark, all these side effects kind of go away and they kind of pop up out of that and they start to feel a lot better. I was like, okay, like he's sitting there, he's got all of these like freaking, credentials on his wall of masters of this, or, he's a doctor, he's got this, he started at a really good university, he was very professional in the way he dressed, the way he approached the situation. So I thought, this guy obviously knows his stuff, like I need to put my trust into him. And I did. And then I went up to 20 milligrams and it just got worse. Like I couldn't even, I literally couldn't even function. And then I went back to him in like, I don't know, maybe like, I feel like it was like 6 weeks of 20 milligrams. I went back to him after that and I was like, I can't function. Like I can't live with this. Like I can't have a relationship. I can't feel love. I can't feel anything. I can't function at uni. Like I literally, like I'm so distracted by all this weird shit in my vision. I'm getting like these silver line things. And I just felt horrible. I felt extremely out of my own world, like out of my own body, out of myself. And so he just said, oh, if you're still so anxious, then, it's probably because these symptoms are because we're not actually controlling your anxiety well enough. So I think we should up the dose. So after that, I just remember leaving that. And then that's when I decided to do my taper. I knew, because I had worked like in mental health, like just on a placement. I remember being like, I know this medication needs to be tapered. So I just kind of slowly tapered off it over the next 2.5 months. And that's kind of like that was my whole like I know it's a very like long-winded, boring story, but like it's I wasn't on it. I wasn't on it for that long. I just had it, so it got worse, decided I can't do this, and then I came off it and it never went away.
Just to recap, so he increased the dosage. He wanted to increase it 3 times, right? He went from like 10 to 20 milligrams, and then he said he was going to increase it again. You're like, I can't deal with these side effects. I'm going to start tapering. Took you about 2.5 months. You officially came off the medication, and here you are 4 years later, still dealing with the persistent side effects.
Yeah.
Did anything? Did it get worse? Did it stabilize when you came off? Did things get a little better and then crash? I mean, what was that?
I would say like it was very weird. Like honestly, I was like just so traumatized by the whole experience.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly like when I came off it. I remember some symptoms like got a bit better, others got a bit worse, and then it was just kind of like a whack-a-mole thing. But it was never like I had these massive windows of recovery, and then it was just kind of like my body was really thrown at the time. So I was like, I don't know. And I was just really, really, really like kind of angry at the time because that's when I had found out about PSSD when I was on the drug. So I was just like, how could you not have told me about this? That's why I was also like, oh my God, I need to get off this.
Right.
I need to stop taking this. And then, like I took my last pill on December 7th of 2020 and I have never recovered. Like I literally feel like I took a tablet this morning. That's how strong the side effects are still.
That's insane. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but you were 20 years old when you took the medication and now you're 24. Yeah. So you essentially missed out on the first half of your 20s because of this.
I will have. So I turned 25 in like just over a couple of months, and like I'm gonna have missed basically my whole first half of my 20s from all of this. Like I'm never, and that's the thing is like you don't get that. You can't get time back.
That's like one of the most horrendous things because I've literally missed the last 3 years of my life. I got PFS when I was 27. I'm 30 now. I feel like the last 3 years have just been my life stopped at 27, basically.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So going back to you then. So I guess have you tried anything? What have you? Has anything helped improve the situation at all, or it's just been the same thing for 4 years?
No. Same thing. I remember in 2021 when I was like maybe 6 months after coming off, there was like a whole thing where I was having like a lot of issues at home, and then I in the end was encouraged to seek a second opinion with like a youth psychiatrist, so someone that might understand my situation better. And he essentially deemed that I was delusional, that this is an extreme form of a delusion, and he actually put me on a mental, like a temporary treatment order. Like he sectioned me, put me in an ambulance. Yeah. And made me, and put me in a psychiatric unit and was like, we need to treat your psychotic symptoms because this can't come from the drug.
That's horrifying. So against your will, you got admitted to a psychiatric unit because the psychiatrist thought that you were just essentially making this up or this was in your head. Yeah. Delusional. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking back because obviously when you have this, like, you're thinking like, oh, but maybe there was like something in the background of them saying like, oh, I was very distressed. Was it like a suicide thing? But it actually wasn't at all. Like I remember saying to him, I don't want to die. Like I don't want to commit suicide. I will in like, I remember at the time being like, maybe in a couple of years if this doesn't like I'm not immediately suicidal, and all of that's documented on all of this, on all of my records. It says not immediately suicidal, like not an immediate risk, blah 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 blah. Like it's all in the documentation, and then it says impression, delusional disorder, experiencing psychotic symptoms, blah blah. Like that was what he actually wrote about me. So that it wasn't even like we have to keep her safe. It was more just like, oh, we have to treat her because she's like, this is just something she's making up. Which is what I find is like really crazy. Like it wasn't even like a half, like she's it was just like this is a delusion. They made me take something in order to like leave the facility. They basically said, if you don't take something, we don't know that anything has changed. So you're just going to go back to the same problem. So they gave me a choice of like these other meds. And I swear to God, the leaflet that they gave me looked like it was printed in like 1995 from like the original Microsoft Word. Like no one had updated it ever since. Like it just was like the worst, most uninformative leaflet I've ever seen in my life. And 2 of the drugs were mirtazapine and buspirone, which the psychiatrist there was like, these don't cause sexual dysfunction. I don't want to waste too much time on this because I feel like I've told this story.
No, this is interesting.
But yeah, I ended up taking one called valdoxin. It didn't affect my PSSD. It made me unable to sleep and very irritable for a couple of weeks. But in terms of like actual PSSD symptoms, it didn't affect it. But yeah, like I haven't made any kind of like recovery or anything since. It's just like it feels like I took the drug and then there was like a chronic adaptation in my brain. And then obviously you remove the drug and the adaptation in the brain has like stayed there. It's like how I perceive it. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, but that's just how it feels. So it's just like I'm waiting for these changes, but there hasn't been anything to like, manually gear shift for me to like feel normal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you started feeling this after, was it the first pill? I mean, or very early on, right?
Very early. Like after I took the first pill, like a few hours after, maybe even sooner. Like it was just as soon as I took it, I remember feeling like I instantly got visual snow. And I was like, oh, that's good. Like the medication's working. Like there's an effect here.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that was like not actually normal, even for everyone that takes these drugs. Like they don't get that. I just thought, oh, this is like, and I just followed his advice. But yeah, for some people, it just, I guess the effects can come on really quickly.
Yeah. It's the same thing with finasteride too. You have people who take one pill and they develop symptoms within hours, if not minutes afterwards. And of course, everybody wants to gaslight them and say this is psychosomatic, but you know your body better than anybody. And you know when something's going on, when there's a shift in your body, obviously, as you knew there was a shift sort of in your brain, very quick. So did your family believe you? Did you tell them about all this?
Not really. Not at the time. They just thought I was being hypochondriac. I think they were just like, oh my God, you're fine. You're fine is what I was always saying. You're fine. You need to stop. You're fine. And then also like my like mum's friends, like whoever was on antidepressants would be like, I'm on that. It's fine. No, she's fine. Like it goes away. It goes away.
Yeah.
It was like the one thing that I heard. I was like, it's not going away. But yeah.
Yeah, they say once you come off it, everything will get better. And this is where, I acknowledge that. Right, exactly.
They've never once tested that. They've never evaluated that once in clinical trials, ever.
You've done the research, you know this, because I haven't looked that deep into SSRIs.
They don't test, once the 12-week trial is over, they say to the participants, bye-bye. That's it.
Wow.
Thank you. Thanks for your participation. That's it.
That's why I think this issue is so much larger than we give credit for. And look, I think we can both acknowledge that people can take this medication without having these persistent issues, but it does happen to a subset of people, obviously.
And on that note, I actually took an SSRI in 2017 called Fluvoxamine. In Australia, it's called Lovan, but I think it's called Luvox in the US. I took it for, I want to say like 6 weeks or something. I never had any of this, ever. Never. And I know heaps of people that get PSSD from Lovan, but I never had any of these symptoms from it. I never had any of these issues from it. It was like I never had any benefit. I just took it. It had no effect on me. So then I just kind of cold turkeyed it after like, 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I just never had any persisting problems. And that was that. So like I understand there's people that are probably taking these drugs right now. They're like, I take that. I can't imagine that happening. I get that. I took it. I was fine. It's for a lot of people that end up with PSSD that I've spoken to, it's not even our first drug that we took. Sometimes people were like, I took Zoloft for a year. I was literally fine. And then I took Lexapro because my doctor switched me and now I have this and it won't go away. I've seen people there's this one guy that I know, he took like almost every SSRI and SNRI before taking paroxetine as like the last one, and that caused PSSD. But he took all these others and was fine. So it might not be the first drug you take. It might be like the second one or the third one. It might never be at one, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a good point. Not to put this back on finasteride, but it's like I've talked to people who will take the drug for 5 years. They'll come off it for a month or two, restart it, and then develop post-finasteride syndrome. There was a guy recently who I saw online. He took it for 20 years, had no issues, came off it for like a month or two, hopped back on it, and now he's got nothing but like physical deterioration. I mean, my heart goes out to him, but yeah, it's almost like restarting like stopping and restarting can potentially get you. But then you have people who do stop and restart multiple times and they still don't develop the syndrome. So we can both acknowledge not everybody gets this, but you never know when you're going to get hit with it either, you know?
100%. And like, that's another thing. I know PSSD sufferers quite well because we all talk very, frequently just because of everything we're going through. And I know people that have been on SSRIs for like, I don't know, 4 years with no side effects. And the second they come off the drug, just coming off, like there seems to be something to do with like increasing and decreasing levels of a certain chemical can trigger a reaction in certain people. And I have no idea how that's even possible. But there's people as well that have been on, say, Lexapro, for example, for 3-4 years. I've spoken to people and they never had any side effects. And then they realize, oh, Lexapro helped me so much. But it's kind of the effect is wearing off. So I'm going to follow my doctor's advice and go up to 30 milligrams instead of 20. They go to 30, they get PSSD. They go, oh, I'll come back down to 20. Hey, I still have these symptoms. Maybe I'll go back down to 15. I still have these symptoms. They come off it. And it's like, I feel like there's something about this. Once you cross this like threshold, it's very hard to come back. And I have no idea how and why.
That's why it's called a post-drug syndrome, right? I mean, you can be fine taking it and then you come off, like with finasteride. That's when a lot of people start developing symptoms, is only after they come off. So I tell everybody, just because you're taking it fine now doesn't mean you may not develop this down the road, and you may never develop it. You don't know, obviously, but that's the post-drug syndrome. That's what that is. It's not while you're taking it necessarily. It's once you come off, the symptoms persist, if not get worse, or maybe you develop new symptoms too. It's insane.
And I feel like the pharmaceutical companies are very kind of almost like sneaky in the way that they are not required to evaluate participants after stopping the drug. There's no follow-up studies. There's no like pre-screening and follow-up questionnaires. There's no like, let's get a full health history of every participant before they take this drug. And I feel like from that, like a lot of sexual dysfunction and all of these kinds of things, like a lot of people might not even put them on their health history. So like, because they might not assume that it would affect that specific system. So then if there's no baseline and then you take a drug and there's no post screening after you've taken it, like, a couple of months after, there's really no way for people to be able to prove like the changes. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's very like,
there's nothing to compare it to. There's nothing to compare it to. And I don't know, I'm assuming you've been to clinicians as well. Have you done blood work or anything, or any imaging tests?
I've done like so many tests and just nothing like kind of, there's no massive standout like but I guess that's part of the problem with our condition is like there's actually not a specific marker or a test that like clinicians can look for. Like if there was a biomarker for PSSD, well, then I could take that test. I'm sure as hell something would come up because my condition's very severe. But like, for, I don't know, certain conditions like lupus, for example, like there are certain things in your blood work that doctors look for when they suspect that you might have it. But they only know that these things exist because there's been so much research go into it. So we know what we're looking for. Whereas with us, it's just like, just because we don't have a biomarker yet doesn't mean we're not unwell. It's just like we don't have a test yet that's sensitive to what we have specifically. That's what's so frustrating is when you go and you're told that you're fine, but your life is just a mess. That you're not fine. Like you've got 100 million symptoms and they just haven't found what's going on yet.
And they really haven't researched it. I mean, I think that's what it boils down to. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, we really have received almost no research into these post-drug syndromes. So I think if we did, we actually had more money to research it, I think we could find a biomarker relatively easily. I don't think it'd be impossible.
Even like the thing you were talking about with your skin, like that's not normal. Like all of these changes, all of these things, there's 100% got to be biomarkers out there. Even, sensitive test people that are reporting, and myself included, really extreme genital numbing. And then when you go get your nerves tested, they test your arms, they test your hands. I've had electrodes on my face, and obviously, like, I don't know how they would test your genital area, but like they're testing around the problem. They're not actually looking at the one area. It's just not, it's not specific enough for what we have yet. But I'm hoping that, like, with more awareness and the projects that we're working on, that we can change that so that, you know, there'll obviously be something that we'll find, because there's so many problems. I'm sure we'll find a million things, but like, yeah.
That's why it's so important for people to step up and go public on this channel or any channel as a platform, right? I mean, we are featuring some really just, you know, successful young professionals. I mean, nurses, doctors, military veterans, microbiologists, entrepreneurs. I mean, I've talked to so many people at this point, and they're all stating the same thing, whether it's PSSD or PFS. They all have the same symptoms from taking these drugs. So there's obviously a major commonality here. And this is where the denial, I'll never be able to comprehend that. It's quite obvious the drug is the cause of all these things. So having said that, Rosie, what are your current symptoms? You kind of answered this already, but what are you still currently dealing with 4 years later?
Oh my God, the most extreme sexual dysfunction, genital numbness. That's like, it's so bad. I literally cannot even feel myself peeing. Like, I could just push really hard when I'm peeing and I can't feel it. Like, it's like, it feels like nothing. Like, I can feel like almost like a dull pressure where like my bladder is, but the numbness is just so severe. Obviously the extreme sexual dysfunction, I cannot feel anything. Like, there's all the sexual sensation is gone. There's like basically I would say like almost no sensation at all, maybe like 1% of like what an orgasm would normally feel like. It's gone. Like, it's like, I don't know, like that chemical reaction is like, if it binds to the receptors, I feel like I'm down to like 1% of what it used to feel like.
Sure.
Then obviously, like, because of that, I have zero libido. I'm basically 100% asexual now. But like, I wouldn't identify as asexual. It's not that I don't have attraction. It's just there's no feeling. Like, I can't feel anything. The same as like waking up completely colorblind. Like, I can still see, but I can't see color. So it's just changed. Everything's just kind of like very, very gray and numb. But cognitively, I feel like I'm okay. I'm not the same as I used to be, but compared to some of the stories that I've heard, like, I'm not the most severe case cognitively, but emotional blunting wise, very severe. Like, I struggle to just feel any emotion, cry. There's not really any depth in life anymore. It's just very kind of like I can function in terms of I can go to work and I can do the work that I need to do and I can just kind of get through the day. But there's no like, life doesn't feel like life anymore. It feels like this kind of weird, like in between, like almost like I've gone through like a little portal off the side of like a little trapdoor through life, and I've entered into like this kind of like parallel universe where it's the same, but it's very, very numb, and like my emotional window is constricted. But I feel like, I've got that. Sometimes I get like random, like I've had like random burning and like prickling sensations over my body. I'm not sure if that's 100% linked to PSSD. I feel like it is, because it all kind of came on around the same time.
Sure.
But yeah, like I don't have any like huge changes in like my skin or my jaw or my bones and stuff like that. But even then, it's just everything's ruined anyway. Like, even if I didn't have that, and I've got all of that, but I just feel like I can't. That was another thing with music. Well, I have tinnitus, but with music, it's like the sound is like not. The sound is so weird now. Like, if I put headphones in, I can't hear the bass as loud, and it doesn't sound as like wide around my head. So it just, everything just sounds really messed up. So I can't enjoy music, which is like just life ruining in itself. But yeah, they're like the main symptoms.
I think you really you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the anhedonia. I mean, the way you described that, it's hard to explain that to somebody. Obviously, to have no emotions, to feel no joy and enjoyment with any of your old passions, and then music too. I mean, I don't feel music at all anymore. I used to love listening to music. Every single day. I don't feel that anymore. I barely listen to music now. I actually when I just need some type of background noise, I will put in my headphones and put on white noise. As weird as that may sound,
Brown noise.
White noise or brown noise, something like that, because
Yeah.
putting on regular music doesn't, if anything, it almost makes me kind of depressed. You know, I listen to old
Yeah.
songs and I get these many flashbacks of how I used to feel, who I used to be when I listen to this. And it's just, yeah, I don't even do it anymore. Like I said, I just listen to very simple white noise or brown noise, whatever it might be. So, well, having said that, Rosie, before we jump off here, do you have any closing statements or anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
I would just say I would encourage anyone who has this to start speaking up about it. Like, I know it might feel a bit weird being like, oh my God, there's a video of me on the internet. I have to go to work and face my colleagues and I'm talking about this like condition. And I don't know, I can't do that. Like, I feel too, like, it irks me. It feels weird. But I just feel like the more that we have a critical mass of people speaking up about this, like, and the more that this kind of whole Me Too movement, you know, evolves, I really think that there'll be a lot more attention on this. We'll be able to get the help we need way sooner. So the most important thing that you can do if you have this is report your symptoms to your country's drug regulator. Without these reports, they can just turn around and say, oh, well, there's no reports. So you have to report it. I know it's like tedious, and they make me like, I'm reporting my symptoms. It was just like such a long and annoying process. There's so many questions, but just do it. Because if we don't have these reports, our regulators can always just turn around and say, well, you didn't report it. So, you know, that's on you. It's your responsibility. How are we supposed to know? As wrong as that is, because everyone's really unwell, report your symptoms and just try and speak up and raise awareness. Even like making, you know, an anonymous account on like Twitter or something, just to try and like, if people don't want to show their face, like there's still so many things you can do anonymously to try and like, you know, raise awareness or help behind the scenes. Because currently, it's just do something. Just do something to try and get the word out.
I completely agree, and extremely well said. I mean, there are things you can do. I mean, even if you want to come on the channel and share your story, you can share only what you want to share. You don't have to share the most intimate details about what you're going through. Just talk about what you want to talk about. Or you can write a blog post as well, an anonymous blog post on, I think, Medium. You can do that. I mean, you can donate. You can, make an anonymous Twitter account and go discuss it on there. I mean, there really are things we can all individually do. And I know there's a lot more of us than we even realize at this point. There's probably hundreds of thousands of sufferers, and we really can, if we just collaborate, come together, we can move mountains. I really believe that. So
I agree.
Well, Rosie, we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thank you. Thanks.